Can everyone hear me now? Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to start over. Sorry about that. I pressed start meeting, but I didn't press the mic button, so I apologize about that. So Debbie has to hear me twice. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. All right. Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, this is kind of a big topic. We have a large group. I expect a lot of questions. I'm going to try to keep to the 30 minutes. I'm going to try to get through the material and leave some time for questions. If I go over the time, I apologize, but it's not going to kick any of us off. It's going to continue running. So you're welcome to stay, but if you have to be somewhere at 10 o'clock, I will be sending out a link to everyone who registered and are in attendance. But it'll probably take a day or two for that. So just keep an eye out for that email. Um, so yeah, I was mentioning when I was talking to myself that criminal activity, it's everywhere, right? We hear about it in the news. Um, there have been stories coming out of Orlando. I haven't really heard anything as far as Jacksonville Catholic churches are involved. But we thank God that nothing has happened. But it's only a matter of time, right? It could be an isolated incident, but even once is too much. So, we hope and pray that nothing happens. But that's not enough to prepare us for the moment that we are called upon to act. So that's why we provide this training so that we can all be prepared. And because other people are counting on us to keep them safe while they worship, right? So, all right, let me step back. So here's today's agenda. Um, I'm mainly going to talk about one aspect of church security and ushers, which is how to deal with a suspicious person in church. I'm not going to talk about an active shooter and things you can do to fortify your church against burglaries and other criminal activities. It These are very heavy topics. There's too much to cover in the 30 minutes. And also with the active shooter scenario as well. I mean, there's a lot of like legalities involved with that, and there's just not enough time to really get into it. So that'll have to be a separate training, probably in a different format. For something like that, I would want it to be like an in-person training or maybe like a longer webinar. But at the end, I am gonna go over a few best practices that you can walk away with and implement in your Usher program and also in your overall church security program. So ushers, their main job is to assist the pastor, maintain order, so that the pastor, the priest can conduct mass smoothly and to keep people safe from the moment that they arrive until the last one leaves. The usher can fill other roles, and they usually do, especially if you're at a smaller parish. And I'm using the word usher interchangeably with greeters because yeah, I think that's probably the same throughout the diocese and pretty much everywhere where the ushers are multi-purpose. So I'm going to assume that everyone here is like a multi-purpose usher. Um, I've been to parishes where the men are ushers and the women usually it's like their wives. Or I'm sorry, their wife, right? For one man, one woman. Anyways, usually they're the greeters, right? And I've been to parishes where the man or woman who greets you at the door is also the one who's helping out during communion line and also the offertory as well. So, in addition to the roles that I mentioned above, ushers are also seen as the face of security and safety. Um, Whether you realize it or not, the ushers you, the usher, you are the early warning system. They're outside greeting people as they arrive, and that's going to be the first opportunity for you to identify a um, a suspicious person, or in any potential problems. You're looking for anything out of the ordinary. And I know, like, there can be a lot of people that show up to church that look out of the ordinary, but they're really harmless. But I'll get into that in a few moments. But the sooner that you can identify a potential problem, the more distance that you can put between the bad actor and everyone else, and then that gives you more time for you and your team to figure out how it's going to be handled, which altogether will increase your likelihood of success in dealing with that problem. Just think, but a principle that I learned in my self-defense training: space gives you time, time gives you options, right? So in a few slides, we'll look at things that you should be looking out for. And you're also a kind of like a first responder. And I don't mean that in a vocational sense, but what happens when someone is having a medical emergency during service, right? What do people usually do? Out of all the times that I've witnessed that happening, like, people look for an usher. They wave their arms, and they seek the usher's help, to help with the situation. I've never seen anyone say, "Hey, Father, time out. We've got emergency over here." The priest will continue doing mass without interruptions. And so, the priest is counting on you all to take care of any emergencies, because he's busy being a priest, right? And so, you see how that kind of plays into, how important it is for ushers to be paying attention. Um, and you also need to be easily identified so that people know who to call upon when they need the help. And one more thing before we get into it. Uh, you need to approach security with the right mindset. You need to be at a heightened state of alertness at all times, before, during, and after Mass, both inside and outside of the church. I realize that some of you, you serve as an usher at the same Mass that you attend. And so, you're there for the Mass as well, but you're also, because you're there as an usher, you have that additional responsibility, that first priority of keeping everyone safe. So let's talk about things to look out for and how to identify a suspicious person. Number one is behavior. Well, actually, but the reason why we need to focus on the proper way to handle a suspicious person is just because someone meets one or any number of these characteristics that I'm going to go over, that doesn't mean that they're up to no good. Okay. Church is a place where people go to when they're happy or they're sad, and sometimes those, they can get real emotional, and that can translate into behaviors that seem outside of the norm. But we have to remember that you are a lay person of the church, so these could be opportunities to minister to them and offer them help if that's the reason that they're there. But we want to be careful that our actions are not interpreted as discriminatory and unprofessional, or else that's just how people will perceive the church if that happens. So as we go through this list here, always be asking yourself, is it appropriate at church? So with behavior, um, let's see, you want to be looking at, or do they seem nervous, inattentive, or scanning the room? Like, if church is going on and, everyone's responding, everyone's paying attention, but you see them kind of like looking around, scanning the room, that by itself may not be a cause for concern, but it is a something that you should be aware of. Also, body language, that's usually a dead giveaway, goes along with nervousness and that sort of thing. But look at their demeanor. Do they appear angry, disturbed, that sort of thing. Um, if they're let's say if they're concealing a weapon, they might be favoring one side of their body, or maybe they're like touching, you see them touching their waistband or their pocket a lot. Again, by itself, may not mean anything, but when you start to, look at things forensically, it might make sense, that they're doing that because they could be hiding a weapon within their clothes. You want to be aware of people's movement in the building. The normal thing is people come in, they say hi, they get their holy water, and they sit down, right? But if you find someone moving around where they shouldn't be, going into restricted areas, sometimes there's a sacristy up front. If they're wandering around, checking doors, that sort of thing, that's usually a red flag, and you want to go and investigate that. Taking pictures is another thing. I see people do this, and when I'm nosy, I look at what they're aiming at, and usually it's like a little child or someone. So I assume like, okay, that might be their parent, right? But if they're doing it a lot, especially if taking video, that could mean that they're casing. They're trying to have like a video documentation of like your procedures, how many people are there, who's there, that sort of thing. Again, that's something that you want to be looking out for. Clothing. Um, Number one sign, if they're wearing inappropriate clothing for the weather, jackets, bulky coats when it's warm, or raincoat when it's sunny. Again, they could be potentially hiding something, wanting to conceal something, but that's kind of like a dead giveaway. Similar to that is oversized clothing. I didn't want to say baggy clothing because that could, carry some negative connotations with that. But oversized clothing, again, they could be using that to conceal something. And with clothing, sometimes you can see like the imprint of a knife or the grip of a firearm, like in the waistband area or in the pocket. So again, there has to be like a number of flags for you to consider because like, maybe someone, well, I don't want to get into it. Never mind. I won't mention that. But yeah, again, if you if you're trained in this sort of thing, you'll know what to look for. Usually like in the waistband. Like even I can like identify people that are like concealed carrying like out in public. They need to dress better, I think, because it's kind of like illegal to be to have that kind of imprint. But for our purposes here, it's something to be looking out for. Also on their clothing, if they have like any kind of political messaging that's like contradictory to church teaching, even jewelry as well. And I mentioned this because I used to go to this one parish where this one guy, he would wear like the old Soviet Union like hammer and sickle and the star, like he had earrings like that, and he would wear like Che Guevara shirts. And I thought that was kind of odd, but he was there with his family, so I didn't think he was there to do anything bad. But I just thought, he stood out from everyone else. He didn't look like everyone else, and it caught my attention. But that's why I mentioned that. Bags and belongings, just think large and long, right? If it appears heavy, like, you see them carrying it and they're kind of like leaning, they could be carrying something in there, a weapon or ammunition, whatever. If it makes unusual sounds like metal, that's something that you want to pay attention to. Now, if you're in a college town like Gainesville and you're going to there at St. Augustine Church there across from campus, seeing someone with a backpack, that's not going to really draw my attention. And like I said, is it normal for church? Is it normal for, the church where you go to? Um, are they carrying political signs? What the sign could be folded up, it could be rolled up, that sort of thing. Um, and backpacks, suitcases. I've heard of people carrying a suitcase and like they brought it into the vestibule and walked away. And, so the usher was trying to figure out, is it harmless? Is it harmful? That sort of thing. But it was just someone who came from a flight, came from the airport, and they went to the restroom and they came back out. Why they didn't bring it in the restaurant, I don't know. But, someone had mentioned this to me before. All right. When you greet them, when you talk to them, if you approach them, if they make any kind of unusual statements other than, "Hey, how you doing?" If they're asking things about, what time do people get there? What time does father get there? How many ushers do you usually have? Or hey, where do the ushers go with the money after, after the offertory? Those kind of things you really need to pay attention to because that might indicate, their intent, you know. And obviously, if they're making direct threats, then that's something you don't want to wait for. You want to handle that as soon as possible. Um, and also children as well. I guess I can that applies to at all times during mass. If you know someone that's paying asking about children, CCD, or, again, by itself, they may be asking for their own children, but if they seem out of place to begin with and they're asking those kind of questions, those would be red flags in my mind. Um, so they might be working with an accomplice, right? They could have maybe you saw them walk in together, but then they sit separate, or maybe they arrived at different times. So you need to be paying attention, not just focused on one person, because one person could just be a distraction or a decoy, and then there could be another person that is observing how you are handling a situation. That could be maybe they're trying to they're thinking of doing something right then and there, or they might be planning something for the future. Okay. So that's why it's important, if you have enough ushers on your team to be able to, like, um keep a handle of all the things that are going on, that's gonna end up helping you um prepare for these kind of things. So in an ideal world, the best time to intercept someone that might have bad intentions is before mass begins, and or before before the service has started, when most people will be in attendance, right? If they're looking to hurt a lot of people, they might wait. They might be waiting for mass to start because they know that that's where the most people are going to be, and they can do the most damage there. So it's important to catch these people or this person as soon as possible. But let's say that no one gets picked up on your radar beforehand, and you start to notice things during mass, and you get the feeling that something just doesn't look right or doesn't add up. Then what do you do? So if you come across that situation, these steps are what was recommended to our ushers at my parish by a sergeant with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, who also attends my parish as well. So following these steps will ensure that you, the ushers, do everything right without violating the rights of the person that you're trying to deal with. And I'll break these steps down into three phases. So number one, um, it might be hard to know what someone might do if they're just sitting quietly, but they're on your radar. If they are kind of suspicious, go ahead and assign an usher to sit in close proximity, usually, two or three rows behind that person, and then at the end of the pew closest to them. You just want to be in a position to observe them, further observe them, and quickly intervene if things progress. Um, like I said, you want to be respectful, but you're also trying to rule out any potential dangers. If the person is being disruptive or threatening, you don't need to wait for step three. Just go ahead and deal with them then. Um, but when you do this, if you do have to ask them to leave, move in close, but don't make body contact. Don't make physical contact with them, because that can make this kind of situation worse. You're if you're at that point, you're essentially targeting them, singling them out, and so they're already going to be that's going to put anybody on edge. They're going to be on the defensive. But if they are being disruptive, just simply ask them to leave, or step outside, if you want to try to figure out what's going on. If the person complies, make sure that they leave, right? Actually walk them out to the parking lot, make sure that they get in their car or get on their bike or however they got there, and that they actually leave the property. Now, if they do not comply, the police officer said ask them 3 times. If they do not comply after three requests, then call the police immediately, whether that be 911 or the non-emergency line. Um, Probably 911 is the safest bet. It's probably going to get a unit out there a lot sooner. Call them immediately, follow the instructions of the operator. They might tell you to hang on until help arrives. But also continue to have someone covering that person. Just be there so, they don't go and do something stupid. And then at the end, as soon as possible, always report incidents to the police, to your local law enforcement district. Um, and also, when you call the police, make sure that it's someone else besides the person who's providing cover. Okay. Um, so, um, yeah, when you report this incident to the police, if you can get a name, that'd be great. They may not provide a name, at least provide a description, details of the incident, and if you can provide any security footage or recordings, if the police ask for that, then get that information to them. Otherwise, I would probably, if you can, like archive that footage, so that it doesn't get deleted. You might need it for future use. But yeah, report it to police because this might be a known individual, or it might be a pattern that the police are seeing in that area. So let's go over some best practices. And what I mean by right stuff is you got to have the right people, the right tools, the right training, and the right tactics. And I put an asterisk next to tactics. I don't mean like, how to disarm someone, how to like clear a room, like, like what the Navy SEALs do, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. Talking about like soft tactics, things like how you can place people, that sort of thing. Um, so you want ushers, it might be kind of hard in parishes where it's, they're hard to find ushers, but if you can find the right people, people that are friendly, and they have a presence, like um, someone not scary and intimidating looking, but just someone warm and friendly, like a disarming kind of demeanor. But you want someone who's like willing and able, right? It's just like when you sit in a exit row in an airplane, right? They always ask, are you willing and able to assist during an emergency? Like that's the kind of person that you want. Right tools. I'm a big proponent of having radios, preferably one with an earpiece and a push to talk button, so that you can speak discreetly. Um, and always, you want to make sure that every team member has a cell phone because, like I said, if someone besides the cover, has to call 911, you want to make sure that someone else can do that. And I don't know about hand signals. Someone suggested, or someone was talking about, I'm not sure I talked to, was talking about they do that. I don't know if that's appropriate for every situation, but that's something that I just want to throw that out there. Um, I think it's important to have security cameras, right? Especially one with a monitor and a digital recorder so that it can record the footage. And the monitor should be in a place where, like, if there's a closet, or I've seen them like um, in like a bride's room, and that's where like an usher sits, like an extra usher sits, and they can kind of monitor what's going on inside and outside. And they need to be, you need to make sure you have these first aid kit, all these different tools, and that everyone's familiar with how to use them. Training is important. New ushers need to be trained, and then you also need to be periodically doing refresher training, at least once a year. If you don't use these skills, if you never learn these skills, you're not going to know what to do. And if you don't use them, you're gonna forget. Um, Everyone needs to learn all the different roles and responsibilities, how to de-escalate tense situations, how to deal with medical emergencies, who does what, how to evacuate and that sort of thing. And also um, doing test runs, because a test run is going to show your weaknesses in all your plan. You can have the best plan, but unless you put it through its rigors, you're not going to know how good of a plan that is. And it's also going to show people if they're weak in a certain area and they can get more training in that area as well. So you do a test run and you revise as needed. Now tactics. If you have enough ushers at each mass so that everyone can be like in a two-person team, that's great. But if not, I recommend having at least an extra, I say two to three, but maybe even one to two extra ushers who can like float around and assist where needed in case someone is pulled to another priority. So like in the scenario that we looked at where you have one person covering, they'll be shadowed by his or her backup, right? And that backup doesn't need to stand watch the whole time. They can pick up whatever duties that the cover was responsible for. But from time to time, check on that person who's watching the suspicious person and, maybe decide whether or not they need to continue watching that person. Um, yeah, so like the extra person would be like an Overwatch, right? Just someone who, um, someone who's, monitoring that security camera, or maybe they're outside, um, checking bathrooms. I'll get to that in the next slide, I believe. So, you basically you want to have as many as you can and make sure that there's one who can like float around and just kind of like oversee everything. Um, Whether you do this in rotations or if you have a specific person assigned to these different areas, those are the vulnerable places where people can be um, assaulted or whatever, or maybe even used as hiding places for people that are waiting for the right time to strike. Like I said, restrooms, nursing rooms, they're usually publicly accessible, like towards the front of a church or like, at the front by like off to the side in the hallway, where anyone can go. You want to be periodically checking those. Um, Daylight savings, gets darker sooner. Like at my parish, when we get out, it's completely dark. And so you want to make sure that ushers are there, just watching people leave and making sure nothing happens. And get involved with your sheriff's neighborhood watch programs. Here in Jacksonville, each district has an organization. I think it's specifically for like church organizations and businesses, where basically where the JSO will update on any like crime activity in the particular area. So that's a good way to know what's going on. Um, so I know I kind of flew through that, and I'm pretty much out of time. So in summary, early warning, try to create space. Space gives you time. Time gives you options. I talked about how to identify a suspicious person, how to handle a suspicious person. Just remember, cover them, give them three strikes, and then call the police. And always remember, do not make any physical contact with them. And some best practices, extra people, radios, training, and join a neighborhood watch. Okay, so if it wasn't for me, my first few minutes of talking to myself, I probably would have had time for, well, I'll take time for questions. Um, you can put it in the chat, or if you're feeling brave this time, I actually did unmute everyone. So if you want to ask a question, you can jump on there and ask a question. Otherwise, just put it in the chat, and I'll give people a minute um, to give their questions. Anyone? I've got 43 people and there's no questions. Any softball questions? Anyone want to throw a softball out there? Maybe I didn't unmute them. Oh, okay. Oh, I got one. Let's see. Where did that pop up go? Would you close the sanctuary at all times before Mass? I would not. s- for like fire safety rules, you can't really do that. I mean, if your entryways are a concern, then I would post people at the entryways and just have them monitor and control access that way. But I wouldn't be closing the sanctuary. Oh, I'm sorry, before mass. Sorry, before mass. No, I wouldn't do that. Because some people want to get there early. They have a favorite seat or something. They want to get there early, or maybe like at my parish, there's 30 minutes prior, there's rosary. They say rosary, so I wouldn't do that. Otherwise, people are going to be. I mean, when is a good time to let them in? When is early too early, right? Those are kind of questions you got to ask yourself. But in general, I wouldn't do that. Um, how can this be repeated? So I will I will provide a link to everyone who registered. Even if they didn't attend, I will send it out to all the registrants, but I'll take about a day or two. Let's see. For those in Clay County, please contact the Interfaith at CCSO with any suspicious activity. Okay, thank you, Arlene, for that. Thank you, Marianne. Yes, everyone should attend. Everyone in the diocese, all, I don't know, 3,000 are people that receive the pastoral briefing should attend my trainings. I would like to see the participation in this webinar maxed out. I think it maxes out at like 999. That'd be pretty amazing and make my day. What is the stance on conceal carry parishioners? Um, there's a reason why I didn't mention that um, in this webinar, because I wanted to save that for another time when we can delve more into that. Debbie, do you mind stepping over and kind of giving a short summary about that?
About what?
Concealed carry parishioners.
Oh,
If you want to step over here.
that policy is currently under review by the Chancery and the Presbyteral Council. So we know that there are new Florida laws that have been put into place. And right now, our policies regarding that are under review, and we should have something forthcoming soon.
Is there a current policy, or is a
The current policy is based on having a concealed carry permit, and no firearms are allowed inside of the church or property, not on a property or a campus where there is a school. And if they do have a weapon, it had to be securely locked in their trunk of their vehicle if there is not a school on property. If there's a school on property, it's not allowed anywhere on property. So that is the current policy. How that's going to change, I don't know yet.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Arlene? Silence is compliance. Okay, thank you. Um, any other question? Okay, yes, thank you. Go Gators. Um, anyone else have questions? The more questions you ask, the later I have to do my work, my after this. So I welcome any questions. All right, well, I think that's it. Looks like people have slowed down with the questions. So um again, thank you everyone. Be out for on the lookout for a survey that will go out. And also in the future when we have more like security related topics, I think we need to do that. It'll be in the pastoral briefing. And always register. Even if you cannot attend, I recommend you register so that way you can receive the link for the playback video. All right. If you think of any other questions or concerns or ideas, please contact me at the information there on your screen. And I hope you all have a safe and blessed day. Thank you for coming.